Hi folks, Pete Lane here. Welcome to Blind Abilities. Let's go out west where Jeff Thompson spent a couple of weeks this summer. Fly with me out to the Enchanted Hills Camp in Napa Valley, California, sponsored by the San Francisco Lighthouse for the Blind. There, way up on Veeder Mountain, is where Jeff Thompson connected with his old friend George Wurtzel to teach a group of blind students the art of woodworking. One of those students is our guest today. Meet Bob Geyer.
I've always been interested in woodworking when I had my full vision. I first found out about WW4B when I was looking for audio versions of woodworking magazines. I think the biggest thing is it improved my confidence in safety and how to make sure that I'm able to use my table saw again without cutting off a finger or anything. I think the most important thing I learned was not to wait to start using a cane.
Not only did Bob chat about his woodworking journey to Enchanted Hills, but he opened up his life and his transition to blindness.
What happened was I was walking down the sidewalk and a family was coming out of the library and I saw them, but I didn't see their little toddler because he was in my blind area. That night I went home and I talked to my wife and I said, I need help. I need to figure out how to use a cane.
His decision to take charge of his life.
The thing that was nice about that is that I learned the mobility training in the environment that I was living in and working in every day. And that was a real big help.
His views on blindness.
There's just so many things out there to help us, from talking tools for woodworkers to navigation aids to help folks get around these days. I think we're living in a great time with all the technology coming out for us.
And a bit more about his instructors.
Welcome to Blind Abilities. I'm Jeff Thompson.
And I told my wife, I said, that's Jeff Thompson, that's Jeff Thompson. And then I also heard George, the main instructor here.
How you doing, George?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm here with the makeup people and trying to get my hair right for this, and they want me to change shirts. They don't like the shirt I'm wearing yet here this morning. Just a minute here. Let me get this. Okay, yeah, okay. No, I don't like the hairspray.
I had heard his voice from the interviews that you had done with him on Blind Abilities.
Yes.
So I knew the voices that I said, I'm home. I'm with the folks that are here to work with.
And yes, maybe even a shameless plug.
I think you have like 429 episodes or something like that. And so I just binged listening. A lot of people binge watch television programs. So I binge listened to Blind Abilities.
We got 2 listeners now.
So kick back with me on Veeder Mountain as we join Jeff and his guest, Bob Geyer.
Welcome to Blind Abilities. I'm Jeff Thompson. We're at Enchanted Hills Camp at the WW4B. That's WW4B.org on the website. Woodworkers for the Blind having their 7th annual up here on Veeder Mountain in San Francisco, part of the San Francisco Lighthouse for the blind and visually impaired. And I'm with a fellow woodworker here, Bob Geyer. How you doing?
Hey, Jeff. Fine. How are you?
I'm doing good, thanks. So what brought you up here, other than the transport?
Well, I first found out about WW4B when I was looking for audio versions of woodworking magazines, because I used to be able to read the magazines years ago, and so I started searching around and I ran across WW4B, and then on their website they talked about their workshops that you all put together. You listed the summer workshop coming up at Veeder Mountain up here with Enchanted Hills, and so I had to sign up.
There you go. What got you interested in woodworking?
Well, I've always been interested in woodworking, mostly more carpentry type of woodworking, but I have made other small projects, furniture and that sort of thing, when I had my full vision. Since I lost my vision, I haven't been able to enjoy it like I once did, and I'm retired now, and so I wanted to be able to go back and do a lot of woodworking projects, and so I figured I needed to learn how to do everything with no vision.
Mm-hmm. So now that you got to experience your first WW4B, what do you think you gathered out of it the most?
Well, first of all, just the camaraderie with everybody. It was a great group of folks up here. Everybody was so helpful in sharing ideas and tips and tricks and how to do things better. I think the biggest thing is it improved my confidence in safety and how to make sure that I'm able to use my table saw again without cutting off a finger or anything. So learning all the proper safety techniques.
Yeah, meeting people that are doing the same thing and they're doing the things a little different way, or they're learning, or they all got hobbies, and it's a neat group of people that seem to always show up here.
Yeah, it was fun because some of the woodworkers brought different tools or other project ideas or things from home. So we were able to see some different tools. Like one of the woodworkers is a piano tuner, and so he works on repairing pianos. It was interesting learning from him how he made different jigs and things to assist him in working on the pianos.
So we worked on making the candy dispensers and got around to some of the tools, but you decided to make another project too. Can you describe that?
Right. Well, it was basically a simple box. It's a box to put over the top of a Kleenex box. So you kind of hide the Kleenex box. And fortunately, George had a beautiful piece of walnut that he gave me to plane down and cut up to size and make the box out of. So it turned out really, really nice. I was very, very pleased with both the little candy machine. That project was fun. I enjoyed the production line aspects of everybody pitching in and doing different aspects of it. And then we finally each settled in on a particular machine that we sort of claimed as ours and put it together and either rounded it or routed the corners different ways and stained it and polished it and, made it our own. And one of the things I really, really learned, and I never had the opportunity before, was to use a lathe. In the candy machine, there's a wheel on the bottom, kind of like a turning tray, if you will, that brings the candy out of the jar. So those were all hand turned on the lathe. And that was my very first experience at ever using a lathe. The instructors were great at showing you how to use the lathe. And I was just floored at the little wheel, as we called them, that I was able to produce. I was very excited about that.
You also, when you went into making your Kleenex box, you started out with a very thick piece of wood and you planed it down, then you jointed it, then you ripped it to square it off, and then you brought it to size. So
yes.
You went through the gauntlet.
Yes, that was fun to take a particular project that I wanted to make. Not that I didn't want to make the candy machine, but a personal project, and taking that from the raw wood all the way down to the finished product and using all of the machines. The planer is just a fabulous, fabulous planer that they have here in the workshop, and then the large belt sander to run the wood through. And I learned different tricks on using the click rule to...
The quarter-inch thing.
Yeah, the little quarter-inch, taking into account the little foot on the bottom of the click rule and being able to put that up against a jig, say, and extending it so that you can measure more easily instead of trying to just feel with your finger and trying to line it up on the edge of a board, just being able to hook it over the edge of the board. And, didn't think about adding that extra quarter of an inch to the board, to make it work. That was good.
We just got power back on the dinner hall. We're sitting outside the dinner hall right by the lake here. So what other hobbies do you have, Bob?
Well, I like to do an awful lot of hiking. So my wife and I, every day, we're out on a hike, and we probably do about 35 miles a week. So that, and then we also work with a dog rescue organization. So we do an awful lot of work with fostering dogs and rescuing senior dogs. So that takes a lot of our time, but we
Keeps
really
you busy.
Keeps us busy. Yeah.
So Bob, what recommendations would you have someone who is walking in your own shoes with RP as you've progressed from knowing you had it to the point where you are today?
I think the most important thing I learned was not to wait to start using a cane. I waited way too long to begin using a cane, just out of maybe male stubbornness, embarrassment or something from using a cane. But once I came to the realization that I needed to use the cane, then went and got the mobility training. Oh, my life has been so much easier at being able to get around and feel safe that I'm not going to walk into anything or into anybody.
When you start to accept it.
Yes. Yeah. And not be embarrassed about it. One of the things I did was I was still working when I came to the realization that I needed to use a cane. What happened was I was walking down the sidewalk and going around the corner of our public library, and a family was coming out of the library, and I saw them, but I didn't see their little toddler because he was in my blind area of my peripheral vision. And I walked right over the top of the little boy. He went down, his head hit the concrete, and he was crying. And I started to cry because I was so worried about him. And fortunately, he was fine. Nothing serious happened to him. But that night, I went home and I talked to my wife and I said, I need help. I need to figure out how to use a cane. So that was the start of it. And I was still working at that time, and I sent an email out to everybody in our entire organization, like 300 plus people, and told them about my eye disease and that they were going to see me with a trainer walking around the city and in city facilities learning how to use a cane, and that I wasn't embarrassed about using the cane, and I felt comfortable if they wanted to come up and ask me a question, please come up and ask a question. I mentioned to them, don't be embarrassed for me. I just wanted everybody to know what had happened to me or why the change, because I know they would see me and just wonder, and so I just wanted to put everybody at ease right from the beginning, and I think that was a big help too.
Another thing that you're talking about when you mentioned that don't be afraid to use the cane, start using it before you absolutely have to so you get acclimated to it.
Right.
You also mentioned that you're going to start thinking about voice screen readers and stuff.
Yes. Well, since I've retired, my RP has progressed even further. I've used Zoom text for quite a while, but, I keep upping the magnification all the time, and I'm getting to the point where, there's just a few letters on the screen that I can read. And so I decided to start to learn JAWS. And so I put JAWS on my computer so I could learn that before I could no longer read with Zoom text.
That's one of the things I find mostly is people put it off, put it off, put it off, put it off. And then it's a crashing blow to them when they can't do either. So you went to mobility training.
Yes.
And did you get that through your state?
I got that through the Vista Center for the Blind in Santa Cruz, California.
What was that like?
Well, it was really nice because the instructor came to my house and met with my wife and I and explained to both of us what was going to happen and explained to her about being a sighted guide to help me when I needed it. But then we started right from there and started walking around my neighborhood and through intersections and learning how to navigate busy intersections with a cane. He also helped me ride the bus. Since I wasn't able to drive, I was riding the bus to work. So he rode on the bus with me and how to get on and off the bus. He went to my place of work and walked all around the office. Spent the day with me and saw everything that I did. I had to walk to a lot of different locations as part of my job. And so we walked to all of those locations with my cane and he pointed out all the different little tips and tricks. So the thing that was nice about that is that I learned the mobility training in the environment that I was living in and working in every day. And that was a real big help. We also went to a local shopping mall, so I was in a real crowded situation and learned how to get on and off escalators and that sort of thing. And so
it was a good experience getting some training.
Yes, absolutely. It certainly boosts your confidence that you can do things and you don't have to be isolated and stay home. And nowadays with the technology, it's advancing so rapidly. There's just so many things out there to help us, from talking tools for woodworkers to navigation aids to help folks get around these days. I think we're living in a great time with all the technology coming out for us.
Not to toot my own horn or Blind Ability's horn, but when we first met and you came in here, we were down at the dining hall, you said something like, I listened to 50 of your podcasts, and your wife says, yes, he has.
Yeah, I had been listening to Blind Abilities once I found you, and then I found your website and found how I could download a whole bunch of your episodes. Well, no, what I did was I was able to sync my Victor Reader. That was the big thing, is that I use Victor Reader, and I think you had mentioned on one of your shows about putting that into your podcast player. And so I put that into Victor Reader and bam, it popped right up. I went through, I think you have like 429 episodes or something like that. And I listened to the title of every one of those. And some of them I would click and listen to the extra description on it. And then I started saying, okay, set that one for download, set that one for download, set that one for download. And before I knew it, I had 54 of them downloaded. And so I just binged listening. A lot of people binge watch television programs. So I binge listened to 54 episodes of Blind Abilities. You guys do a fabulous job at Blind Abilities with all the podcasts that you put out.
We got 2 listeners now.
Well, we're dedicated listeners.
It is really fun to be up here. The group that was before you, the music group, and so I was sitting next to someone and he said, I know your voice. And I said, I'm Jeff Thompson. And he goes, you're Blind Abilities. It's like a small world. And he worked up in Victoria, Canada. Oh, wow. And they suggested to their students. So it was just one of those things that, you're up on a mountain out in the middle of nowhere, and these people, it's a small world, but on this mountain, there's a lot of great people.
Right.
It was just fun.
Same sort of situation when we all first got together in the dining hall the first day of woodworking. A little bit of orientation about the facility and what we were going to be doing and that sort of thing. But while we were milling around, I heard your voice off in the distance, and I told my wife, I said, that's Jeff Thompson, that's Jeff Thompson. and then I also heard George, the main instructor here. I had heard his voice from the interviews that you had done with him on Blind Abilities. Yes. And also from the television commercial that George starred in. So I knew the voices, and I said, I'm home, I'm with the folks that are here to work with.
You binged, and you're still hearing our voices.
Yep. I've enjoyed it all. It's been great.
Well, Bob Geyer, thank you so much for coming on the Blind Abilities and keeping you from dinner, so that's not a good thing. Thanks a lot, Bob.
Well, thank you, Jeff, and thank you to everybody with Blind Abilities. You all do a great job, your correspondents out at the conventions, and just all of you. Very, very thankful that you have the programs for us, so thanks.
All right.
This concludes our visit with Bob Geyer. We'd like to thank Bob for taking time out of his day to chat with Jeff. And for all of you out there, thanks so much for listening, and have a great day. For more podcasts with the blindness perspective, check us out on the web at www.blindabilities.com. We're on Twitter. We're on Facebook. And be sure to check out our free app in the Apple App Store and the Google Play Store.